Hey guys, what is up? Steven here, going to do a film room on Rashawn Slater. Obviously, this draft could not have panned out better for the Chargers, at least in terms of the first couple picks. I'm still kind of pinching myself that the Chargers do have Rashawn Slater as their starting left tackle going forward. And I just cannot wait to dive into this film room. I think Rashawn Slater is going to bring a lot of great things to the table for the Chargers. And first and foremost, I think the best thing about Rashawn Slater is that he is consistent, right? Like if you watch the tape or even the highlights of Northwestern football in 2019, it's a lot of losing and it's not very competitive, right? Like everybody talks about the Chase Young game, which we will get into, and they lost 52-3 in that game, but it didn't matter for Rashawn Slater. And I think that's something that he even talked about in his from his high school experience, where again he didn't win a whole lot, so he had to learn how to make an impact regardless of what was happening around him. And I think that is something that is so crucial, so important to really every NFL position, but especially the offensive line and especially cornerback, which I've talked about before too. So these positions where you get on an island, you've got to be the same player on every single snap. You might lose a rep against Chase Young. You might lose a rep against Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa or Von Miller, but you can't let that affect you going forward. And I think that is like the biggest thing for Rashawn Slater that I'm a huge fan of. So we're going to get into his actual film. And in terms of the on-field product, I think he's the most technically refined tackle in this class. I've said that really from the beginning. I did feel like, Penei Sewell physically is a generational talent, but he did require a lot of work in terms of technique. Rashawn Slater doesn't. He's ready to go from day one, which is a huge blessing for the Chargers. Secondly, he's incredibly athletic, which we're going to talk about, how Northwestern used him as a run blocker and how he gets to the second level and makes impact blocks there. So a lot of great stuff to dive into, and I cannot wait to get started. So here we go. All right. So first and foremost, I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I definitely had to include, his battle against Chase Young. And I think one of the great things about Rashawn Slater, he's not super physically imposing. You're not going to see a ton of splash blocks, like a Landon Dickerson or even like a Christian Darrisaw, but he understands leverage at such a high level, and he knows how to use his hands, how to use his body, how to use his feet, and how to use angles. And so that's something that's going to be on display on this particular play against Chase Young. He's going to try and take a deep set out, right? And so you see he's so consistent with his hands. I'm going to bring him a little bit closer, but he's so consistent, and he's going to take a great angle here and then get his hands on Chase Young and then work the leverage to a point where Chase Young ends up on the ground. So technically that is kind of a splash block, but I want to go back a little bit here, if it will work for me, because Chase Young kind of tries to turn a corner around him. And then once Chase tries to spin back, that's when Rashawn Slater's like, no, I'm going to sit you down. So he is so instinctive and understands leverage to the point, where he wins this battle, even though he's so close to losing it against Chase Young, who obviously we all know, could have won the Heisman that year if the NCAA rules weren't so freaking stupid. But just great stuff by Rashawn Slater here against Chase Young. So next play here, this is another instance in which he shows off a great understanding of leverage, and this is against Wisconsin. So again, like I said, jumping around a little bit between the Ohio State game, the Wisconsin game, and Michigan State as well. But here you see him going up against a wide nine, and I kind of tweeted out a different clip of him closing the gap against the wide nine, and he's going to do something very similar here. So you see him just immediately jump out of his stance, and that quickness, that jump step is so effective against a wide nine because it closes the gap. It initially closes the gap, because if you just take a traditional deep set against a wide nine, you're left really vulnerable on the inside and on the outside. And so, getting out in a quick set like that is definitely one way to close the gap quickly. And then you're more closely able to mirror what the edge rusher is doing, which is what Slater does right here. And you see him, violently slap those arms down, gets him on the ground. His teammate will finish the job here in a second, and we'll go back to it. But just a wonderful job from Slater, working the quick set, closing the gap, and then understanding the leverage of how to beat this defensive end. And then, like I said, the guard that he's really good friends with, that he mentioned in his video, comes and finishes the job. So great job by both parties there. All right, so another instance in which you'll see Slater, show off his diversity as a pass blocker. And this is something that if you've been reading my scouting reports on LAFB, I kind of highlighted this about every single prospect, right? You've got to be able to bring in diverse package to the table because edge rushers have all these diverse packages, right? And so you've got to be able to use your hands to your advantage. And that's something that he does here. Initially, something that he's so great at is he initially will engage with his offhand and he'll keep his right hand free. And so the reason why people do this is, right, if you punch consistently with both hands, then a high-level edge rusher can slap them and cross-chop you rather easily. And so, again, going back to the point of leverage, bringing just the one hand and being strong enough to control the edge rusher with the one hand. And then once you have a feel for where he's going, then you bring the second hand, and then you can physically impose your will on these edge rushers. So this is something that Slater does very, very well. And again, like I said, better than anybody in the class. And you see, again, once he brings that second hand into the play, then he's able to control the edge rusher and take him really wherever he wants. Keeps him fully away from his quarterback. And look at this job again by the guard. Shout out to him. I don't know if he got drafted or what, but doing a wonderful job there too, big guy. All righty. Hopefully you guys are getting fired up, man, because I am so excited for what he's going to bring. All right, this is the play. This is the one where I was talking about him going up against the wide 9. And so I kind of want to talk about this, why it's such a special play from Slater. Because this is a ways to go. And I don't know if this is not Kenny Willix, because Kenny Willix is on the other side on this play. But look at the ways that he has to go. So he's going to take a little bit more of a traditional set, right? And he still has a way to close this gap. And so he's going to take his one arm. And then once he engages, he's going to burst right through and bring his hips through and finish the block off that way. So what happens a lot of times when you're going up against a wide 9 is those players will try to speed to power you. And that leaves you a little bit vulnerable, because there's so much space between you. And the edge rusher can kind of get under your chest and push you back into the lap of the quarterback. So I understand, this edge rusher isn't it's not Chase Young, but the technique that Rashawn Slater, brings to the table here is so sound that this is going to apply to anybody, right? So you get that one hand, and then you bring your hips, and you bridge that gap. And so that allows him to ensure that an edge rusher is not able to get under his chest, that an edge rusher is not taking the fight to him. He's bringing his strength, his power, his anchor, and brings all of it with his hips against the edge rusher. Just outstanding technique. And it seems very simple, but it's so difficult to do this on a consistent basis. And the fact that Rashawn Slater is showing these kind of things as a junior in college, it really demonstrates and shows how diverse of a pass blocker he can be and is at this point. So definitely wanted to highlight that and kind of talk about my thought process of why it was so impressive to me. And then you finish it off, you get a guy into the dirt, really the getting him into the dirt isn't really what's most impressive for me. The fact that he's able to close that gap so quickly is what's impressive to me. And then I do love the little you better stay down kind of shove that he does at the end. I do love that. All right. So grab some water real quick. All right, I think this is another. Yeah, this is the time where I was initially going to play this one first to kind of talk about his. This is where you'll really see his ability and strength to just control edge rushers with his one hand, with his offhand. And so it's just something that I love here because he always keeps his right hand free. He's ready for counters at any point. And so he's able to do that. And you see it takes him 2 or 3 seconds to engage with both hands, showing great patience, always being prepared for the counters that the edge rusher is going to bring to the table. Just outstanding. And like I said, that's every play. It's so consistently on tape. And it's just something that I have loved to see. So the other thing that I want to talk about in terms of Rashawn Slater and his skill set is, like I said, he is an elite athlete. We all know that by now. He ran a 4.840, tested through the roof. But it's one thing to be able to test through the roof, and it's another thing to be able to visibly see that skill set on tape. Like, that's the difference between Slater and somebody like Alex Leatherwood, who tested off the charts, but you don't really see the athletic traits on a consistent basis on tape. You know, a guy like Samuel Cosme tested through the roof. You see the traits on tape. They're not super consistent, but they're there. And so you see these high-level athletic traits from Rashawn Slater, like I'm going to talk about in a second, as a run blocker. But where I see it the most is his ability to recover. And I kind of tweeted this out. Like, even if he's beaten for a second, he's able to use his quickness and his athleticism to recover and close gaps in a hurry, like super, super fast. And it's just so impressive to watch him, you know, against Chase Young. Even, you know, he's going to give up just a slight second, half second of an inside rush. And if this is not against Rashawn Slater, Chase Young probably gets a sack here. But Slater's going to take one step to the outside and notice that he's beat for half a second, and then he closes that gap in a hurry. So again, this might seem like a very simple play, but this is Chase Young. Like, you have to close this gap in a hurry, or else he's going to get to the quarterback. And you see just how much ground Rashawn Slater has to make up and how much ground Chase Young is covering with this kind of athleticism. And so, again, if that's a different tackle right here with this kind of just a little bit of a gap, then that's a sack. But against Rashawn Slater, it's not. You know, he's able to wash him down and recover rather well. Another instance here in which you'll see the ability to recover. You know, he gets beat just by a hair against a spin move. I believe that's Zach Bond. But he's so smart, understands the pocket, and he's able to, again, close this gap in a hurry and make sure that his quarterback is not getting touched. So, you know, a lot of people might look at that like, whoa, like he got beat for a second. No. Like, the recovery right there is the most important thing because, like I said before, he's not going to be perfect every single rep of every single game for an entire season. But he brings this kind of skill set where he can recover and, you know, marginalize the risk of him getting beat. That's so important, right? Like, that was a big issue with Sam Tevi. Sam Tevi, he's arguably just as athletic as Rashawn Slater, but he doesn't have the kind of skill set to close gaps and recover at the kind of level that Rashawn Slater does, as we've seen here just by these couple clips. So, outstanding job here. All right, I want to talk about his ability now as a run blocker. And Northwestern ran some really confusing, you know, kind of run concepts. But, you know, the one thing that consistently shows up on tape for them and for Rashawn Slater is his ability to reach blocks and execute blocks on the perimeter using his natural range, which is kind of a different thing. But that's going to be on display here. You know, he's able. Oh, wait, this is another pass block. Excuse me. This is against the spin move. I'm sorry. Jumped the gun a little bit. But I did want to talk about this just to kind of show you his footwork and how he's able to anchor down and use his power. So I apologize. Jumped the gun a little bit in terms of the run blocking. All right, so here he is back again against Chase Young, and he's able to execute this reach block and make sure that if his running back and the other teammates are doing their job, he's got a nice little lane out there, nice little alley. So we'll go back here for a second. This is kind of like a mini pass block rep when you're doing a reach block like this. Your goal is not really to root out Chase Young. Your goal is really to try and get him upfield. So it's almost like a draw technique. But your goal here is to make sure that you're taking Chase Young and not necessarily taking him out of play, but just making sure that he's not making the play, which Rashawn Slater does a great job here. All right, so here you'll see, again, his range and his ability to close this gap, and then you'll see him execute a fantastic leg drive, constantly turning those feet and making sure that he is able to finish this block well. And, the effort and the energy is consistent for Rashawn Slater. Again, talking about, who he is as a person and as a player. This is just an outstanding job, because he doesn't necessarily have to, once he's able to get this guy out of there, some players will kind of stop, but he keeps his feet going, finishes this block, and gives his running back a chance to, really get a couple yards after contact here, which is the case. All right, this is one of the more impressive ones. This game, it was so frustrating because Rashawn had a few blocks like this, but the camera didn't pan over quick enough. So I just want to, this person that he's blocking is like 8 yards, 10 yards to his left. And so he's able to get out there and first and foremost, making sure that his guy has the defensive end, which is Willikis in this scenario. And then, like I said, that he covers so much ground right there that he's out of the screen. A little frustrating to watch, but just shows his kind of athleticism. And again, you see the ability to finish this block with his energy, with his feet, and he's always latched on, which is just, fantastic from Rashawn Slater. All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about here, you all know how I felt about Elijah Vera Tucker and, the ability that he brought to the table. And one of the things that I always highlighted about Elijah Vera Tucker is how smart he is at taking angles at the second level. And Rashawn Slater is definitely like that. I think the difference is that Rashawn Slater is an elite athlete and Elijah Vera Tucker is a very good athlete. So Elijah Vera Tucker is a little more, shall we say, cautious about the angles that he takes, whereas Rashawn Slater just goes. He just sends it. And the play that I'm going to end this with is one of the most absurd plays that I've ever seen from an offensive lineman. But in general, Rashawn Slater is very good at executing second level blocks. And for the team that I coach, we call it a scoop block, where you are either, working in general with your hand in hand with your guard to get up to the second level. Either you kind of absorb the defensive end and he works up, or vice versa. You kind of just make sure that he's good, provide some support, and then you get up to the second level. That's what's going to happen here with Rashawn Slater, again, the left tackle, number 70, right? So he's going to make sure that he engages enough to make it look like a double team, and then he's able to get up to the linebacker, number 17, and give his running back the chance to isolate against this defensive end. So if the running back is able to clear this lane, then the running back is set, right? Because look at Rashawn Slater in perfect position. He made sure that his guard had all the help that he needed, and now he's going to get up to the second level and does a perfect job setting up his running back for success, and the running back ends up finishing the job for a touchdown. So just outstanding technique, outstanding energy, outstanding effort by Rashawn Slater here. And you really see his athleticism here, because that's a 3 or 4 yard gap between him and a linebacker. Actually, I think that's a safety. So he's got to be able to close this gap, make sure that he's not getting beat. Like, that's not an easy thing to do against a safety in the hole. And he's able to get there, give his running back a chance. All right, so the last play here, Again, just one of the most absurd plays that I've seen for running back. And I did tweet this. So Rashawn Slater, excuse me, lining up at left tackle, and he is going to essentially cross all the way to the other side of the line of scrimmage to cut off this linebacker number 39, who I believe is Malik Harrison, the linebacker from the Ravens. So a great athlete in his own right. And Rashawn Slater is going to go all the way across to make sure that he makes this block against Malik Harrison and ensures that his running back has this cutback lane. And, you know, that is just an absurd, and his running back shows off a nice little finish there. But I'm going to go back again and just watch Rashawn Slater right here, left tackle, and see how much ground he covers and how quickly he closes this gap against the running back. I'm just going to play this a couple times just because it is so absurd that a left tackle that weighs 310 pounds can move like this. Like, again, you know, the athletic traits are showing up on tape in spades. And this isn't the only time that stuff like this is happening from Rashawn Slater. You know, this shows up on a consistent basis. And having this kind of athlete who can get to the second level and block linebackers and safeties like this is going to be such a big advantage for the Chargers and the run game. And like look at this. This is an absurd block. He probably could have done a little bit of a better job of, you know, washing the linebacker down instead of turning his hips. But that's just kind of shows you again the short range athleticism to go from I'm going to block this guy this way, and then right at the last second, I'm going to turn my hips and close the gap for this guy and wall him off. Just an absurd block on all accounts from Rashawn Slater. And so that's going to do it for the film study. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm so excited about Rashawn Slater and what he's going to bring to this team. If anybody knows when the Vapor jerseys come out for rookies, let me know, because I am buying a Rashawn Slater one as soon as that happens. And yeah, I'm buying an offensive lineman jersey, and I'm going to be thrilled with it. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know how excited you are about Rashawn Slater in the comments. Again, this is going to be on Patreon first. All of our videos go on Patreon first. So if you want exclusive access to the videos, you know, make sure you sign up. If you want for Arjun and for Scott's videos, you have to be at the $5 tier or higher. For all of our film breakdowns and Alex's Saturday, I think he calls them bolt breakdowns too. You've got to be at the $10 tier or higher. And so we do really appreciate all of that. The description of how to find that will be in the bio. And as always, make sure and subscribe, like, comment. We do really appreciate all of you guys, all the support. It helps us grow a lot. And yeah, that'll do it. All right, guys, thanks. We'll see you next time.